Picture this, you're lying in bed at 3 in the morning and you hear something move in the closet. You tell yourself it's nothing, your mind playing tricks. But then the door creaks open and a shadow steps into the room. This isn't a nightmare you can wake up from. This is real, and it happened to me. Over the next hour, I'm going to share 3 terrifying encounters that happened at beach houses, places where families create memories, where we're supposed to feel safe. But what I discovered will change the way you think about empty vacation homes forever. These aren't ghost stories. These are real events involving real people with motivations far more disturbing than anything supernatural. And the scariest part, the warning signs were there all along. We just didn't see them. I'm going to break down exactly what went wrong in each situation, the psychological patterns that made these victims vulnerable, and most importantly, the critical mistakes that nearly cost lives. Because understanding how predators think, how they operate, and how they exploit our assumptions about safety is the only way to protect yourself. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll never look at a vacation rental the same way again. Part 1. The Psychology of Home Invasion. Let me start by walking you through something that fundamentally changed my understanding of personal safety. It was that transitional period after graduation when life feels suspended between who you were and who you're becoming. No structure, no routine, just endless empty days that blend together. That psychological vulnerability, that feeling of being unmoored, it matters more than you might think. When my mother asked me to check on my uncle's beach house in Delaware, it seemed like the perfect solution to my restlessness. A simple task, a change of scenery, a reason to feel useful. The drive from Pennsylvania was straightforward, just over 2 hours through familiar territory. Nothing about the situation triggered any alarm bells. Why would it? This was family property, a place where 25 relatives gathered every summer for games and celebration. But here's what I didn't understand then, something that investigators would later explain to me in detail. Empty vacation homes are magnets for a specific type of criminal. These aren't random break-ins. These are calculated decisions made by people who study patterns, who understand when homes are occupied and when they're vulnerable. They know the off-season schedules, the maintenance visits, the windows of opportunity. When I arrived that late afternoon, the house looked exactly as it should. Nothing broken, nothing disturbed, no obvious signs of intrusion. I worked through my uncle's checklist methodically. Faucets, breakers, property perimeter. Everything checked out. But the silence, that oppressive quiet in a space designed for noise and activity, that should have been my first clue that something was wrong. The human brain is remarkably good at recognizing when environments don't match expectations. We've evolved to detect anomalies, subtle shifts in atmosphere that signal danger. That eerie feeling I experienced wasn't irrational. It was my subconscious processing information my conscious mind hadn't yet articulated. The house felt abandoned, and abandoned spaces attract people who want to remain hidden. I made the decision to stay overnight rather than drive back in the dark. That choice probably saved my life, though not in the way you might expect. If I had left, this person would have continued using the house as a hiding place, potentially encountering other family members later. My presence forced a confrontation that needed to happen. The master bedroom represented comfort and security in my mind. Private bathroom, walk-in closet, quality bed, all the markers of a safe, controlled space. But that closet, that seemingly innocuous storage area, became the focal point of absolute terror. Because when you hear a sound in the middle of the night, your rational mind immediately begins constructing explanations. Something fell. The house is settling. You imagined it. This is where understanding the psychology of fear becomes crucial. That initial sound, the one that woke me around midnight, triggered what's called a threat detection response. My heart rate spiked, my senses sharpened, but my body remained still. This is actually a survival mechanism. Movement attracts attention. Stillness provides time to assess. My brain was trying to determine if the threat was real or imagined before committing to action. The second thump eliminated all doubt. This wasn't imagination. This wasn't the house settling. Something or someone was in that closet, and this is where the experience becomes truly instructive from a safety perspective. I experienced two distinct types of paralysis that night. The first was psychological, a fear-based reluctance to investigate, to confirm what I already suspected. The second was physiological, an actual inability to move when I heard the closet door opening. Sleep paralysis, or more accurately, the transition between sleep states that can cause temporary immobility, is a documented phenomenon. But what I experienced went beyond typical sleep paralysis. The sheer intensity of fear can actually trigger a freeze response so powerful that voluntary movement becomes impossible. Your sympathetic nervous system floods your body with stress hormones, but instead of fight or flight, you experience freeze. It's the third survival response that people rarely discuss. Watching that dark figure emerge from the closet and stand beside the bed while I lay completely helpless remains the most terrifying experience of my life. Not because of what happened, but because of what could have happened. I was entirely at this person's mercy, unable to defend myself, unable to run, unable to even speak. For 20 seconds that felt like hours, I existed in a state of pure vulnerability. Then the figure turned and walked away. Not downstairs toward an exit, but upstairs to the third floor. This detail becomes critical when understanding the criminal psychology at play. A burglar would flee. A random intruder would seek escape. But this person went deeper into the house, into a space with no exit, suggesting a level of comfort with the environment that implied extended occupation. The decision to call emergency services required overcoming that paralysis, forcing movement despite every instinct screaming to remain frozen and invisible. That quiet whisper to the dispatcher, the careful lock of the bedroom door, these small actions represented the transition from victim to survivor. Because survival often comes down to those tiny moments of courage, those split-second decisions to act despite overwhelming fear. The police response was remarkably quick, something I'll forever be grateful for. But their initial search found nothing, which created a profound cognitive dissonance. I knew what I had heard. I knew those footsteps went upstairs. The only possibility was that this person was still in the house, hiding somewhere the police hadn't checked thoroughly enough. This is where having an advocate becomes crucial. My uncle's insistence that they search again, his refusal to accept their initial assessment, potentially prevented a tragedy. Because the police did find something on their second search, an unlocked window on the third floor. Not broken, not forced, simply unlocked. This suggested premeditation, advanced preparation, someone who had been coming and going from this house for an extended period. Part 2. The Squatter's Playbook. The discovery on the roof represented the culmination of something far more disturbing than a simple break-in. When that police flashlight illuminated a figure sitting calmly on the roofline, just existing in that space with no apparent concern for being caught, it revealed a mindset that most people can't comprehend. This wasn't panic. This wasn't someone caught in the act. This was someone who felt entitled to be there. Let me explain something about squatting that most people don't understand. Professional squatters, people who make a lifestyle out of occupying other people's properties, they develop sophisticated techniques for identifying and exploiting vacant homes. They study utility records, observe property maintenance schedules, monitor social media for clues about when owners will be away. This isn't opportunistic crime. This is systematic exploitation. The man they removed from that roof fit a profile that law enforcement had been tracking for years. Disheveled appearance, reluctance to engage, that vacant expression that suggested either substance abuse or mental illness or both. But beneath that exterior was someone who had successfully occupied this property for potentially weeks or months without detection. That requires intelligence, planning, and an understanding of how to remain invisible. Think about what he accomplished. He identified an off-season vacation property, found a way inside that left no obvious signs of forced entry, established a routine that allowed him to come and go without attracting attention, and created a hiding space in that master bedroom closet where he could observe anyone who might unexpectedly arrive. The closet wasn't random. It was strategic. From that position, he could monitor the bedroom while remaining concealed. The psychological impact of realizing someone had been living in that house, sleeping in those beds, using those facilities, observing private family moments during summer gatherings, it creates a violation that extends far beyond simple property crime. This person had inhabited intimate family spaces, had potentially watched children play, had been present during vulnerable moments. The invasion of privacy operates on a level that most people find deeply disturbing. But here's what law enforcement explained to me later. This behavior, while terrifying, follows predictable patterns. Squatters seek invisibility above all else. They don't want confrontation. They want to exist in spaces that should be empty, extracting resources without detection. The fact that he emerged from the closet and left the room rather than attacking me supports this profile. I was an unexpected complication, and his instinct was to hide and wait for me to leave. The question of how he accessed the roof becomes important when understanding his long-term strategy. Roofs provide visibility, allowing observation of approaching vehicles and people. They also provide escape routes when properties have multiple levels. The unlocked third-floor window wasn't an entry point. It was an emergency exit. He had been using the main entrances, probably doors, because he had somehow obtained or created access. This raises an uncomfortable question about property security that most vacation homeowners never consider. How many people have keys to your property? Family members, property managers, cleaning services, maintenance workers, previous renters. Each key represents a potential security vulnerability. Keys get copied, lost, or stolen. Locks rarely get changed. And squatters understand this weakness better than anyone. My uncle's refusal to upgrade security, despite his entire family urging him to do so, represents a common psychological response to violation. Some people respond to trauma by fortifying defenses. Others respond by minimizing the threat, convincing themselves it was an isolated incident that won't repeat. This denial serves as a coping mechanism, a way to preserve the innocent associations we have with places that hold positive memories. But the reality remains. That house became vulnerable the moment my uncle's parents passed away, and it stopped being a primary residence. Empty homes attract opportunistic criminals like moths to flame, and the longer a property remains unoccupied, the more likely it becomes that someone will notice and exploit that vulnerability. The thought that haunts me most isn't what happened. It's what could have happened. If I had followed my usual family tradition and slept in one of the smaller third-floor rooms instead of claiming the master bedroom, I would have been sleeping directly in the path of his escape route. That unlocked window was in the room where I normally would have been. The implications of that coincidence are difficult to process even now. This experience taught me something fundamental about safety. The spaces we assume are secure, the places we associate with family and comfort and positive memories, these can become the most dangerous places precisely because we let our guard down. We stop being vigilant. We stop checking locks and windows. We stop considering who might have access. And that complacency creates opportunity. Part 3. The illusion of shared spaces. Now let me take you inside a completely different type of beach house horror, one that reveals how quickly trust can become a weapon. My friend Mike's Jersey Shore property represented everything a vacation home should be. Beautiful, isolated, comfortable, and loaded with positive family history. Multiple generations had created memories there, had celebrated life's milestones in those rooms. But that legacy of happiness made what happened there even more disturbing. The initial visit seemed perfect. Late July, peak summer season, just two friends escaping routine for a low-key weekend. No massive party plans, no agenda beyond enjoying the beach and each other's company. We fished, we walked the shoreline, we had casual conversations with strangers. Everything felt safe and normal because we were operating under assumptions that the world around us was fundamentally benign. Meeting those two girls on the beach reinforced that assumption. It was a pleasant, organic interaction that happens constantly in beach communities. Exchange numbers, maybe meet up later, nothing threatening or unusual. The world encourages these connections. Social media celebrates spontaneity and openness. We're told to be friendly, to embrace new experiences, to trust until given specific reasons not to. But that philosophy ignores a crucial reality. Predators understand and exploit social conventions. The next day passed in comfortable routine. Morning run, afternoon on the beach, evening exhaustion. We made half-hearted plans to go out but ultimately chose rest over adventure. And then midnight arrived with that piercing alarm that shattered everything. Sound is a powerful psychological weapon. A smoke detector alarm triggers immediate panic because we associate it with life-threatening danger. Our brains are wired to respond to that specific frequency with urgency. Whoever planted that device understood this. They understood that the alarm would force us to move through the house, searching, focused on finding the source rather than considering security implications. The device itself was fascinating from a technical perspective. Small, simple, effective. Just a black box with a switch and a blinking light. No complicated electronics, no sophisticated surveillance equipment. Just a noise maker designed to create chaos and distraction. And it worked perfectly because we never questioned whether someone might still be in the house watching us search. Finding it hidden under a pillow in a third-floor bedroom should have immediately raised red flags. Pillows don't accidentally cover devices. Someone deliberately concealed it. Someone who knew the layout of the house. Someone who wanted to control our movements and attention. But in the moment, focused on stopping the noise and understanding what we'd found, we didn't consider the broader implications. The hour we spent analyzing that device, theorizing about how it got there and what triggered it, represented exactly what the intruder wanted. Time. Distraction. Our attention focused on a mystery instead of on securing the property. And when I finally tested the switch and realized it required manual operation, that someone had to physically flip it to start the alarm, the psychological impact was devastating. Someone had been in the house while we slept. Someone had climbed to the third floor, entered a bedroom, retrieved this device, activated it, and hidden again. All while we were unconscious and vulnerable just one floor below. The violation of that realization, the knowledge that a stranger had moved through intimate private spaces while we were at our most defenseless, it creates a trauma that logic can't easily process. The police response revealed something even more disturbing. Every window on the third floor stood wide open. Beds were flipped. Drawers were pulled from dressers. The entire floor had been ransacked. But when Mike and I had searched up there immediately after hearing the alarm, everything had been neat and undisturbed, which meant that whoever was in the house had waited for us to go back downstairs after finding the device, then had spent time deliberately creating chaos. This wasn't burglary. This was psychological warfare. Someone wanted us to know they had been there, wanted us to feel violated and helpless, wanted us to understand that our assumed safety was an illusion. The open windows weren't escape routes. They were messages. They were proof of control, demonstrations that this person could access the house at will while we remained powerless to stop them. Part 4. The Predator's Strategy. The final story I need to share operates on a completely different level of premeditation and malice. This wasn't opportunistic crime or squatting or psychological intimidation. This was organized predation targeting young women with surgical precision and terrifying efficiency. And it began with the exact same assumptions about beach community safety that had characterized the previous encounters. My friend Lindsay's family beach house represented the pinnacle of vacation property luxury. Her parents were neurosurgeons with resources that allowed for a truly remarkable property. Modern architecture, private beach access, the kind of place that exists in a separate category from typical vacation rentals. But that exclusivity and privacy, the very features that made it so desirable, also made it a perfect hunting ground. The four of us arrived ready for a relaxing weekend. We chose to share a room despite having individual bedrooms available because that's what friends do. We wanted the bonding experience, the late-night conversations, the shared memories. That decision, staying together, ultimately saved lives. Had we separated into individual rooms, the outcome would have been catastrophically different. The first night began exactly as beach weekends should. Sitting on private sand, drinking moderately, listening to music, stargazing. Completely normal 20-something behavior in a space that felt safe because it was associated with family and positive memories. When we noticed the flickering light approaching along the shoreline, it registered as curious rather than concerning. Beach communities are social. People walk at night. Encountering strangers is part of the experience. The three young men who approached projected exactly the right combination of friendly and respectful. They didn't intrude. They responded to our greeting. They sat at an appropriate distance. They engaged in conversation that felt natural and comfortable. Every social cue they sent suggested they were just other people enjoying the beach, potential friends or romantic interests, normal summer connections. This is where understanding predatory psychology becomes crucial. Effective predators don't look or act threatening. They mirror social expectations perfectly. They read situations accurately and adapt their behavior to seem trustworthy. They understand that young women are socialized to be polite, to give people the benefit of the doubt, to not seem rude or suspicious. And they exploit those social training patterns with practiced efficiency. The invitation to their house came after an hour of comfortable interaction, an hour of shared laughter, of stories, of apparently genuine connection, an hour that established them as safe, as people who respected boundaries, as potential romantic interests rather than threats. And three of my friends, influenced by alcohol and positive social momentum, wanted to continue the evening. I opted out, not because I sensed danger, but simply because I was tired. That decision haunts me, not with guilt because I couldn't have known, but with recognition of how close we all came to complete disaster. If I had been more energetic, if I had wanted to keep drinking, if I had been interested in hooking up with someone that night, I would have gone with them. And the outcome would have been very different. Lindsay's decision to maintain some responsibility, to drink less because it was her family's property, saved 3 lives that night. Her relative sobriety meant she remembered clearly what happened next. The other guy, the one who didn't pair off with Thea or Sabrina, became angry when Lindsay insisted on going home. Not disappointed, not understanding, angry. That emotional response revealed the crack in the performance, the moment when the mask slipped and authentic rage emerged. When he ordered her to leave his house, Lindsay complied, grateful to escape an uncomfortable situation. But she forgot her purse, a completely normal oversight after an emotional confrontation. And that forgotten purse required her to return, to approach the house again, to arrive at exactly the moment when she could witness what was actually happening. She saw them forcing Thea and Sabrina into a vehicle, saw them handling unconscious bodies with practiced efficiency, saw the truth behind the friendly beach encounter. The cascade of emergency responses happened because Lindsay reacted immediately and correctly. Call police first, establish professional emergency response. Then call me to provide immediate pursuit while police mobilized. Every second counted because once that vehicle disappeared into normal traffic patterns, finding it would become exponentially more difficult. The fact that I was able to reach Lindsay's car quickly, that I knew the approximate direction they had traveled, that I was willing to drive dangerously fast to maintain visual contact, all of these factors contributed to a successful intervention. Watching police remove 2 bound and beaten bodies from that trunk remains seared into my memory with perfect clarity. The reality of what would have happened if any single element of that chain of events had broken differently, if Lindsay had been less sober, if she hadn't forgotten her purse, if I had taken longer to respond, if police had been slower to intercept, the reality of those alternative outcomes is almost unbearable to consider. The aftermath revealed layers of premeditation that transformed this from scary to absolutely chilling. The house wasn't theirs. They had broken into someone's vacation property and were using it as a base of operations. They had likely done this before, had refined their approach, had learned how to identify and exploit vulnerable targets. The three of them working together represented a coordinated predatory system designed to kidnap young women. What we can learn: three beach houses, three very different violations of safety, but connecting them is a common thread that I need you to understand completely. The assumptions we make about vacation spaces create exploitable vulnerabilities. We assume empty vacation homes are secure because they're family property, because they have good locks, because they're in nice neighborhoods. But squatters know that emptiness equals opportunity, and they're willing to be patient and invisible for extended periods. We assume the presence of other people increases safety, that witnesses mean protection. But intruders can use psychological manipulation and strategic timing to operate in occupied spaces while remaining undetected. We assume that friendly social interactions in public spaces are genuine, that people who approach us with smiles and laughter are trustworthy. But predators are expert performers who understand exactly how to exploit social conditioning and politeness. The single most important lesson from all three encounters is this: trust your instincts even when you can't articulate why something feels wrong. That eerie silence in the empty house, that feeling of being watched, that anger that seemed disproportionate to the situation, these are your subconscious processing information your conscious mind hasn't yet recognized. The second lesson: never assume that because a space has always been safe, it will continue to be safe. Circumstances change, properties become vulnerable, and criminals are constantly scanning for opportunities. And finally, survival often comes down to tiny decisions and random chance. Choosing one bedroom over another, forgetting a purse, having a friend who maintains enough sobriety to recognize danger. We can't control all variables, but we can remain aware, vigilant, and willing to act when something doesn't feel right. Stay safe out there. Question assumptions. Trust your instincts. And remember that the most dangerous predators are the ones who look exactly like everyone else.